So I didn't mean to give you a shock. It certainly gave me one. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the workshop for the ISCF Commercialising Quantum Technology strand. So if Roger and I and Lydia look a bit kind of nervous today, I've asked CR&D and feasibility studies competition closes at lunch at 12 o'clock today. It was 12 o'clock today, not 12 o'clock tonight. So if any of you were planned on finishing your applications this afternoon, you have my permission to leave now and do it, because we do. Yes, yeah, that's absolutely right. Phone rings probably yours. A couple of hygiene factors. There are no planned fire alarms. If there are, this was an announcement, then apparently it's just an announcement which says there is a fire, which is good. Restrooms are at the end if you haven't found them already. So here we go. The agenda today, Roger is going to give a bit of an introduction on to the quantum project ISCF in itself. I'm then going to talk specifically about the competition, the scope, and kind of the purpose of the competition. So the technology project strand, as we call it, is the fourth pillar of the ISCF quantum program. And I probably need to explain a little bit when we get into it what the purpose is and how it differs from the others. And then there'll be a break, and then Lydia will give a brief talk, because this is an expression of interest. So a lot of the details in terms of the costing details, for example, will become in the second phase of the competition. And there'll be a gap between me and Lydia. There'll be an opportunity. Roger and I are going to be here all afternoon, well, at least for a couple of hours this afternoon. If you want one-to-ones with one or both of us, depending on what the demand is like, then talk to Natasha on the desk, and she'll book you in with a slot if you want to talk to us. We did that for the last competition, and it kind of worked quite well. So just to introduce us, I'm Chris Jones. I'm your Deputy Challenge Director for the ISCF programme. Roger McKinley is the Challenge Director. Sam, do you want to stand up? Just introducing you, most of you get to know us quite well. Sam is the new innovation lead, and he joined the team on Monday. I hope you'll help him, and he'll be probably arranging to. In addition to Simon, who's on half-term duty today. Roger, do you want to start?
So good morning, everyone. In a previous existence, I used to go to dreadful MOD briefings on programs which were still looking for funding. And after 3 years, I sat in one briefing and I said, I bet this guy, who was wearing a lot of braid on his shoulder, I bet this guy uses his slides from last year. And he said, actually, I'm going to use my slides from last year. There's a huge difference between a program which is stuck waiting for something to happen, and a program which is actually running as we expected. So I am using some slides many of you will have seen before, but the point is, which I always think when you're talking delivery rather intent, the point is we're actually still doing exactly what we said we would do back at the beginning of the year, 153 million, and spending it in broadly the same way. So I think that's actually a good sign. But I will watch the room carefully, because if people are looking as if they're absolutely fed up with hearing the same story again, I'll motor on. Let's talk about phase one, which is almost over now. It's very difficult to talk about it being in the past, but actually 1 December, so a month to go now on phase one before the new hub structures come in. Still 4 hubs, still the 4 locations, broader scope of work. And I've seen various events appear in diaries for launching those new works. And we've already, I think, the decision to tweak the scope of work in phase 2 has been justified, most notably probably with the announcement Google made, where moving on from 5 years ago, we really do see a spectrum of technologies on the quantum computing side, all of which have their merits. So in phase one, a large chunk of the 400 million was on the hubs and capital, and then training and skills and the CDTs and some studentships as well. NPL Quantum Metrology Institute was set up. That is now, I think, well and truly out there making plans to do stuff rather than create itself. We had a lot of sponsorship from DSTL, so I apologise profusely to how rude I was about military programs 5 seconds ago. But DSTL, particularly on the sensing side, were a major sponsor of a program. And then we tend to forget now that as well as the EPSRC money, there was significant Innovate money, that UKRI slice, in some EE and quantum calls in the past. And it wasn't long ago that most of those projects were still in flight. If you remember, we ran a Pioneer, and this is very much did its job. It did its job very, very rapidly. But this was a little vision piece we gave. We didn't include quantum computing deliberately because it was rather a complicated story. And that's actually been a huge benefit because people now know that we're not just computing focused. Personally, I believe if you look at the balance of activity in a year's time, a lot of it will be relevant to computing. But of course, the clocks and the sensing and the comms side were equally important to us. And that's manifested in the 4 projects we've now got, which I think in a few weeks' time, Chris, we actually hit our annual review on pretty well. Yep. So running for a year, the Kairos miniature atomic clock led by E2V, Pioneer Gravity led by RSK Environmental, that's the cold atom gravity gradiometer, and a couple of quantum key distribution programs, one down fiber, led by Toshiba, and the other over satellite, led by Arkit. And in the past year, we've actually seen, I think, QKD certainly look at the moment as if it's the closest to a commercial market. That's enormously beneficial to us across all aspects of quantum because these guys will be facing some of the scale-up and manufacturing issues, albeit on the photonic side. But certainly when it comes to getting silicon talking to glass and doing some of the tricks these guys need, I think that's done us a huge service. One of the themes you'll see coming out of this is we're just desperate for people to put money in and start getting it back, because that's how businesses start. So encouraging investment is really what this ISCF program is about. So where are we heading? We've still got the hubs. They're broadly funded to the same extent they were in the past for phase 2. We have a new animal called the National Quantum Computing Centre. That's beginning to take shape now. It will be based at Harwell. And it's really more and more, you could think of it as an innovation centre, you could think of it as facilities, you could think of it as a government lab, because some of the things we want to do on computing will require a secure or a suitably secure and quiet environment to do it in. But I think more than anything else, it's part of a story we're seeing emerging, which is the need to fund and encourage investment in capital. And having seen the press's reaction to the Google announcement, I think we've been through possibly 15 or 20 years of people with money thinking all they needed to do was find some bright people to sponsor. And it's a while since the world's got used to just how expensive developing hardware is. And the quantum scene has brought hardware back into fashion. But it costs. And as someone we were talking to yesterday on the investment side says, you've got to realize what really costs is when you've tipped a shed load of money into making something and it doesn't quite work, so you have to make it again. So the kind of increments you need to find money in are significant. So that's related to what we're looking at in the call today. And ISCF is a large chunk of this, and that is a mixture of public money and overmatched with private money. Now, it's not, as people keep asking me, a pledge. That's the kind of language you use of the foundation industry, which basically is pledging money it would probably be spending anyway. And there's many dialogues of government like that. This is money which is going to come into this business from people who've yet to invest and into companies which don't yet exist. So we're a different animal in quantum from some of the other ISCF stories. And I'm pleased to say that with the work of Chris and Simon Plant in particular, we've managed to keep that education process going within UKRI. Reminder of the industrial strategy, which was launched 2 years ago now. And even though I don't think ISCF has been used recently as an expression, fashions change and governments change. Or maybe they don't, I don't know. What is absolutely clear is the idea that the future UK economy is going to require investment in the technologies, and the best skills we have at growing and adding value are the technical and industrial ones, is well and truly still there. So if you are following party conferences and other news comment, the 2.4% of GDP on R&D is still a figure you will hear cited. So whether it's voiced or not, I think we are still in there with a mainstream of thinking about where our economy is going. And the objectives, improved R&D investment, breaking down barriers on research, interdisciplinary, multidisciplinary, and getting the academic and business engagement together. And, you know, this slide, every time we use it, is beginning to sound a bit more like a so what, because these things aren't future things. We've got plenty of evidence that they're happening already. And I'm hoping that when midday rolls around, we see what we've got on the CR&D and feasibility studies call, there'll be plenty of evidence of that collaboration being a current thing, not just an aspiration. Back in June, we actually had the Prime Minister announcing the 150 million investment in this ISCF Wave 3. I think, Chris, some programs are still yet to be approved. So we're in a good... Don't. We've got further on it. But no, just historically, it can take a long time to get all the Wave 3 approved programs kicked off. And so we actually got kicked off very, very fast, which is why we're in a position now of being not only running competitions but closing competitions for that first round. So that was the vision. And you'll notice there's a focus there on two things. One is products and the other is technological barriers. And we've been very keen as we've evolved our strategy to tease those apart, because there's a tremendous tendency when you talk about TRL levels to believe that all investment goes from turning an idea into a cardboard box with the wires hanging out into a mature product. And that is only one aspect of many aspects of investment. And we've also got to think about removing other barriers, which includes, for example, the whole issue of scale up and being able to manufacture. So that's a clue as to where we might be heading as we move into this new competition. Very much industrialization rather than commercialization. I think we've all got the hang of that. They are just words, but we really do expect to see companies involved with their own ambitions and their own funding and their own strategic intent, not companies who are there to front up what is still an academic activity. And it's impossible to measure that, but our health measure will actually be not only having, if you like, companies who are experts in the technology, and some of them might be very young, but companies who are experts in using the technology, for example, like BT. So here we are, CR&D first round about to close, feasibility studies about to close, technology projects. If you had a magnifying glass, bang on time, that little orange, yellow bar about to start. And in fact, our investment accelerator competition has already opened and closed, and we're in the assessment phase of that. So, so a program which is well and truly up and running. And to be honest, for those in the team, delighted that Sam's joined us, because it's been quite a growth curve for us to actually, as a delivery team, with the help of our other colleagues in competitions in UKRI and on the investment side, but to actually scale up our activities to keep these on schedule. And we know that many of you in the room have been wearing out pen nibs and fingertips over the past few weeks as well, so thank you.
Very right. A quick question on that slide.
Yep.
The right column of the outcomes, do they correlate with what's in the middle, what we deliver, or are they just accidentally aligning?
Those are actually oh, I see what you mean. Can you read horizontally? I would hope not. because I don't think we just want SME involvement somewhere dropping off the bottom of the investment accelerator. No, they're just a column. Don't read. Yeah, do read the bit which is obviously meant to be read horizontally. Back to the objectives: increased scale of Q2 products and services, increased business investment, which of course can be in things other than products and services, and of course breaking down the barriers, as we put it, both within the research community and within business and academic engagement. 4 strands then, and very much at the moment focusing on what we call tech progs then. I think it's probably tech projects now, projects rather than programs. Just a quick reminder then that 3 rounds of CR&D, so 1 is about to close. Collaborative projects, and we were expecting to fund around 15 of those, very much services and products aligned. Feasibility studies, if you remember, these are smaller projects which may well manifest themselves as full CR&D later in the programme, depending on what progress is made. We will expect to fund more of those. We're having some interesting discussions about what happens if you land in between those as a big feasibility study or a small CR&D. So the rules which apply today as well, I'll make sure Chris is nodding, is we will maintain a dialogue with you as you apply, okay? Our only rule is we say the same thing to everybody, but we're not going to lock ourselves away and leave you living behind a computer interface. We are proactively encouraging you to ask questions early on, because really our measure of success is how many good, allowable, eligible applications of sufficient quality that we get through this process. So the one-to-ones which we may have today, we are welcome for future discussions on, as to the extent we can, given the number of hours there are in the day. The matched funding, we are under this pressure to show, that's the wrong way of putting it, because it sounds like we're not going to achieve it. We're under a pressure to evidence the amount of investment. I personally feel within about 18 months or 2 years, 205 million will have found its way into quantum because of our activities. I really don't think that's going to be an issue. But in order to keep feeding the monster, because we would like to get more public funding into this, we will be looking at identifying and evidencing the catalytic effect of these projects in terms of what other investments have come in. And that we are trying to do in the least intrusive way. But, you know, the first place we turn are our, if you like, our first stage beneficiaries, the financial and economic consequences of the grant recipients having received a grant. We're going to be commissioning a broader piece of work through the life of the programme to look at some of the other impacts which wouldn't necessarily show up in the finances of the individual beneficiaries, the wider impacts that this investment has had. So technology projects, 46 million over 2 rounds. So this is round 1 opening today, or briefing on today. And may allow co-location of specialist facilities is a euphemism, because we set ourselves a party piece, which is try and write this whole thing without saying innovation centre, okay? Because it became almost a meaningless term. That is not being in any way disparaging to people who may already have a quantum innovation centre, a QUIC of some description, but we actually felt it was far too broad a term. And we also felt there was good evidence that Bristol is a good example, UCL is another good example, that those people who'd wanted to actually facilitate innovation in this way were already up and running. So we're not ruling out innovation centres, but we actually did want to set this a bit broader, so that we weren't actually just, if you like, in creating a very specific animal called an innovation centre. We're looking much broader than that. And the investment accelerator, this is now closed, but this is part of an ongoing campaign we have to actually get more money in. Basically, talking to VCs, talking to funders. I think from discussions we've been having over the past 6 months, I actually think there's a lot we can do here, and we may have to look at other ways of encouraging VC investment, not just this accelerator. The accelerator is very much suited to Innovate UK, but we've seen both in the space business and now in a national security fund investment coming in through the British Business Bank as well. So Chris and I and others are having discussions about just seeing whether we are thinking broadly enough about encouraging money into this sector. I think I'm hoping Google's done us a great service in this, to be honest. And I won't, I'll tell you what, I will now claim to be the only person today to mention a quantum winter, because it's, those of you who were at the Boston conference a month ago will know, those who just follow trends are now talking about, just as IA had a winter, quantum may have a winter. Well, I don't actually mind, to be honest. I've survived many winters. So we're going to be much more specific. In the UK, we really do want to be making sure that the superb ideas and academic excellence we've got is not being hindered by the availability of suitable funding, and that's going to be a growing ambition, I think. A summary of delivery streams, probably too small to read, so let's skip on, and then that's the overall plan. As I say, pretty well unchanged. So within the world of ISCF and projects which have kicked off, at the moment we are saying we're running to schedule. The only thing which could slow us down is a lack of appetite from you, I'd say. That was the big business case we had to make, which is, having only just gone through our pioneer phase, we believe there was industry appetite to pull together resources and invest and make these things happen. So as long as we hit that schedule, you know that it's being driven forward by this mainspring of real appetite to get commercial benefit from these technologies. Great. Thank you.
Thanks, Roger. Just to, I suppose one thing I'd just dwell on of Roger's slides is the for information and subject to change. By the way, all the slides will be available, and there's a video being made, so it'll all be online later, so you can kind of check our kind of various sorted cock-ups later. So, I mean, that will probably, the only thing I'll say about that is I can guarantee that isn't what we'll finally do. So particularly all 4 strands are either live or just about to close. I think it's fair to say, Roger, we'll then take stock a little bit in terms of the plans, but that's the plans we're approving, and I guess the bottom line is, so I think one important message is half of our entire funding, 75 million, is in train now. So we're going to commit that over the next 6 months. But that's what we plan to do. But as I say, talk to us if you have particular plans which are aligned to that.
You can guarantee the plan won't change until it does.
Yeah, that's right. I guess one thing I'd add to what Roger said is really what the purpose of what we're trying to do is. Because when I do these briefings, I mean, I know a lot of applicants, you're really focused on what you want to do. And I guess one of my general pieces of advice is to think what we're trying to do as well, and what we're trying to achieve in this programme. And a great application aligns the two together, achieves what we want to do and what you want to do. But broadly speaking, the ISCF programme is really about 2 things. It's about using the power of quantum to remove barriers to the growth of lots of different technologies. So we're not growing one technology or one particular sector. We're actually wanting to grow lots of different ones. And the other, of course, is to ensure that the value chain or the supply chain to support those innovations and those accelerations happen in the UK. So it's a little bit different to some kind of areas where you have a lot of different companies, and really, I wouldn't say picking winners is a very out of fashion word, but you're trying to really get get the best projects forward. We're actually trying to do something else as well. We're trying to do something strategically to make sure that the UK, building on the fantastic strengths arising from our world-leading academic scientists across the country, we're trying to put an infrastructure together and a landscape together that is genuinely to the benefit of UK companies and UK businesses. So we are doing something a little bit different than simply wanting to get the best projects and the best products forward. And I think that informs where we are with the technology strand, which I'll come to in a minute. So the competition's open. It opened on Monday and it's on our website as usual. My general piece of advice is keep checking, because there are occasionally minor changes to these briefs. You can usually tell when it changes, the date's on the page. So you can generally tell whether or not it's been updated. So do check it, and certainly before you press send on your application, do kind of check it again, just in case something's happened. So the timing, so just to be very clear, this is an EOI phase, so it's a light touch competition, really to collect. It's a relatively easy competition project form to fill out. We're really trying to collect your ideas at this point. So the competition closes on the 26th of November, which gives you a month, which I know isn't very long, but that's really the point. So you get your EOIs together. You've then got a significant period of time until the 5th of February. So if you're successful in the first round, you've then got quite a lot of time, including, let's be honest, Christmas, New Year, and a general election. At least one general election, actually. so anyway, sorry, I didn't say that. Obviously, we've got a very busy time over Christmas. So let's just go through the details of the competition. So we'll distribute a share of up to £30 million in grants to UK businesses of any size. So you don't have to be an SME to lead in this competition on quantum technology development projects. So the aim is for businesses to lead research and development projects aimed at removing the technological barriers to the commercial industrial exploitation of quantum in the UK. As I said before, it's the phase one of a two-phase competition. So just to be clear, it's a light touch process. So if you're successful in phase one, you'll quickly be told whether or not you'll be eligible for phase two. That will effectively be a closed competition. But what I'm trying to do today is to give you as much detail as possible about what the second phase of the competitions look like. So a lot of the things I'm going to talk about, things like eligibility and numbers, will apply to your final end competition. But the EOI is a little bit lighter touch, so we don't need all those details to be in place. So let's just talk about the scope a bit. So what do I mean? So what we had in mind is the fact that there are certain technological barriers to which you say, if only we, and by we I mean not just a single product development group, I mean a group of quantum companies or even non-quantum companies, they have an idea of a particular technological barrier that actually is common to a number of them that they'd like to have removed in order to get to the next phase. And some of those barriers might be not the answers to them might not lie in the quantum community as we're used to. So a lot of you are used to, we have a very well integrated quantum community in the UK. I think that's one of our USPs. But maybe the answer to that doesn't lie within that community. Maybe the people who have the solutions aren't around the hubs and around the quantum technologists. They might be, for example, materials people. They might be actually software people. It might be different with different areas of interest which aren't necessarily within our quantum group. So the idea is you, and you being a company or group of companies, identify a technological barrier and you propose a project that addresses it. It must outline what the implications are to businesses, i.e. what opportunity does it open up, and describe a credible to solution and how it's innovative and competitive, what the value of it might be, and actually work out how it might be exploited. I think my next slide really is kind of the question you probably have back in mind, how is this different to CR&D? And the answer to that is, I guess, it doesn't have to be that different, but we're looking for projects which, I understand there is an overlap between, and a number of our big CR&D projects kind of look like the technology projects. And I understand there's an overlap between the two. But what we're trying to cover in this is projects, particularly large projects, which aren't necessarily focused on a particular product and a service. For the large CR&D projects that we're wanting to fund, they have in mind a product or a service with an end user, with a specified way of it might be developed, a market that's well identified, and almost a linear route. So most of those projects, I mean, are quite linear projects, which have effectively fundamental technologies on the left-hand side and a person who's going to have the end product or the service at the other end. What we're looking, when we talk to industry about what they might want, people started to say, well, actually, I mean, there are some research projects that we might want to do where we want to guide them. We don't necessarily want academics to come up with the idea and then ask to join along these projects. We don't actually necessarily want to fund, as a single company, we don't necessarily want to fund all this project ourselves, because we understand if we solve this solution, there'll be other people who are going to be able to use this technology solution and not just us. So we wanted to have an opportunity for business, just for once, to try and drive a research program that has common interests, and common outcomes, so you can get together and take control. So one way of looking at it is, rather than having research programs within universities where industry is invited to come along with, which is fantastic, you have an opportunity kind of to drive some of those programs yourself, and actually specify the outcomes, and actually maybe also work together. So we're actually looking for you don't have to, but you might well want to put your activities in a place, and that place might not be a quantum place. That might be a centre which isn't a traditional centre of quantum technologies. You might agree, and say the example I usually use is of a particular material that a number of you might want to use that's limiting you at the moment, and you might want to actually group together and go and try and find a group of technologists, other companies or universities who might want to help you solve that problem. And in the end, that the ability to solve that will be shared amongst the people you want to do. I mean, I think it's an interesting idea, and I do understand, if with a few kind of wrinkled faces, I do understand it's a little bit different from what we're used to doing, which is funding you to collaborate on a pretty linear program. But it's your opportunity to see if you have the creativity and the ambition to work together on some of these opportunities. They're quite big projects, because we don't really want you to do small projects, and we want you to have big ambitions and also work together, and with some people, ideally, who aren't necessarily in this room, maybe. So I say it's aimed at something which is common to a number of different companies. We say you don't have to work together. I understand working together is kind of not an easy thing for businesses to do, which is one of the reasons why we've taken the approach we have of funding activities rather than facilities. But we want to give you the opportunity, if you wish to do that. That might be something you might want to do. Okay, so the scope is. A lot of the scope elements are the same as our previous competitions, but for those of you who aren't completely familiar with them, I'll outline them here. We've identified 3 general areas. You'll see different numbers, actually. I think we went up to 5 at one point as we've refined our thinking. But we've ended up settling on 3 broad technological challenges, which we expect quantum solutions to enable. Connectivity, situational awareness, which I guess is code for all forms of technologies which give awareness of their surroundings, such as electromagnetic sensors, optical sensors, gravity sensors, etc., etc. And also computing, of course. So computing was not in scope in the first ISCF competitions we ran a year ago. It is in scope now. And the projects must exploit what we call second-generation quantum techniques. Now, one of the... and I have these on a slide. One of the things I have to be really clear here is that I know some of this language is really pretty dense and it's very short. You have to understand the number of words we have in order to we have to have so much boilerplate in these competition briefs, the amount of freedom we have to be free in our narrative talk and our vision, I mean, it's bugger all, frankly. It's about 15 words we have, which is why I'm trying to unpack that a little bit. So what do we mean by second generation quantum techniques? We mean the generation and control of quantum states resulting in phenomena such as superposition or entanglement. Just to be clear about it, we say single photon generation and generation and reception, by the way, that got deleted somehow, and quantum computing are also in scope. I think the only one I really want to say, because most of you are probably familiar with this definition from our previous competitions, is the issue of single photon generation and detection. We've had to do quite a lot of clarification in our discussions around the current competitions. We're not really looking for simple and increase. So if it's a current sensor, let's say a camera, and you simply want to make it a bit more sensitive by detecting single photons or the multiple photons, that's not really what we're looking for. We're looking for you doing something a little bit clever, such as time correlation, etc. But we don't have the number of words to describe that in our scope. So one of our general bits of advice here is talk to us, particularly around areas which look like they are in the grey areas. For example, we had a lot of discussion around in the first competitions around algorithm development and software, and we had to discuss around the difference between simulation and emulation, for example. So just do talk to us about technical scope, but I hope most of you by now, if you're familiar with our competitions, kind of understand what we mean by second generation, rather than simply funding kind of lasers and semiconductors, which you might have attempted to do. So, as usual, we're interested in looking for a return from the quantum technology research. We do kind of appreciate that most of you do that. Actually, one of the things that surprised me over the summer, and we've been talking, Roger and I spend a lot of time talking to BAEs and across government, because one of the great things about quantum is there's a lot of interest across government now in quantum, not just within the science community, is actually there's still a really strong perception across governments, not just this government, that academia and industry don't work together. Now, I know you will go, that's we're working together all the time. That perception hasn't really got over. And when I look at the fantastic collaborations I see and visit every day, I kind of do think it's a message we need to continue talking to government about, because I don't think they realise how well we work together. And I think Roger's talked about it already, bringing significant investment into the sector. I think I've got a slide about it later, but I think the increased leveraged investment is a really, really big deal for us. As usual, we talk about a portfolio of projects, and that's really what Roger referred to, what we referred to about our strategic ambition here. The way it kind of looks to us is there's a whiteboard, right, with technologies on one end and products and solutions on the other end. And one of the games that we have to try and play is to make sure that we have a pretty full whiteboard, so clearly we're not going to fund a lot of everything. We do sometimes fund competing technologies, but I think we're unlikely to fund frankly, exactly the same problem solving in using the same approach from two different companies. So one of the things that we always reserve the right to do is to actually balance our portfolio a little bit, which is one reason why you need to keep talking to us, because we can give you the same guidance we would give anybody else about where we think the gaps are in the UK supply chain and the portfolio, and we're happy to do that to anybody. Or we're equally happy to listen to your comments about what you think those trends are. Because one of the things that we've done an awful lot of talking to industry. I think, Roger, we probably need to do some more workshops actually after Christmas, because things move so quickly in quantum. But most of you went to a lot of workshop activity. We were all workshopped to death actually over the last year or so. But we do need to revisit you a little bit, because there's a lot of, I think we have some insights which we need to collect from you. So we have up to £30 billion available. Project size, you'll notice the project size minimum is quite big at 4 million. And we say of eligible costs, and that's project, not grant size. So we're looking for you to put up to relatively £20 million projects, but the maximum grant is going to be 10 million. And up to 36 months. let me just go back on that. That is the maximum project size and that grant size. So on this table here, we're all looking at the applications coming in right now because the competition closes. I've seen already 2 applications who've misunderstood that, and they've put in a project worth 800,000 with a grant of 499,000 pounds, whereas it's clear they've misread it, and they've misread it as the 500,000 is the grant size rather than the project size. So I know we keep saying it till we're blue in the face, but it is still something that a mistake people make. It has to be collaborative, up to 30% research organisation participation, industry-led. We'll talk a little bit later about RTOs. Probably most of you know RTOs aren't universities, and under very rare conditions, RTOs are the right people to lead a consortium. It is very rare, but if you wish to do so, you need to get our permission. If your project costs lie outside that, then get in touch with us as early as possible, because often they are not an easy question to answer, but do get in touch with us. In all honesty, I don't think the project size is going to go down to 500,000 or anything like that, but do talk to us if you're very close to those limits. We don't want to kind of stifle your creativity, but do kind of talk to us if you need to. Let me just talk about, there's one little kind of wrinkle here that you need to bear in mind, which is that if you go for a big project, which is more than 10 million, you may well need to manually tweak your application to make sure so you might end up with an intervention rate which is lower than the 50, 60, 70% you're normally used to, and you might have to tweak it manually. Because normally the system assumes you want as much money as conceivably possible, which, let's be honest, is usually the case. But in this case, that might not be the case, particularly for large projects. So it's just a reminder that you might need to do a little bit of tweaking. So why have we gone up to big projects? It's an interesting question. Why are we not just leave it at 10 million? And we want really to get some of this industry funding, and we want you to really back in. Some of your projects might need to back into our projects. So you might well have some significant internal industrial activity that you want to align with what we're kind of doing. So you might well have quite a lot of activities that you're doing, and it might be quite a lot of things that you're doing which we aren't necessarily going to fund. But we wanted you to be creative. You don't have to use that 20 million, but it's just an option there, because it's a question we sometimes get, can we have really big projects? Okay, eligible cost. I guess we're not going to talk a lot about eligible cost. I just wanted one thing to make very clear, is that this is a competition like our other competitions, so the funding must go towards project activity. We're funding capital usage, but not significant capital investment up front. So, and no for buildings and refurbishment. So this isn't about building infrastructure, this is about doing projects within infrastructure. We understand that there's quite a lot of you who've been asking for big capital and build projects. If you have those asks, particularly if you're a business, then continue to talk to us about it, because we are talking to. So Roger mentioned the I word. Am I allowed to say it again, Roger? The Innovation Centre. I said it now. Innovation Centre's word. So we do understand a lot of you were wanting to talk to us about infrastructure changes and investments. Still, it doesn't mean you can't talk to us about it, but we aren't going to fund them under this call. And if you note from our call where they might well be working with you to help someone else to fund them, but we aren't going to fund new buildings and very big capital investments in this particular call. So most of you are familiar with this, so I won't really dwell on it. If any of you are new to our competitions, we don't give you all the money. We give you a proportion of the money that you have evidenced to us that you have spent on eligible things. So we don't give you all the money up front. You tell us how much you've spent on eligible costs, and we give you a proportion based on the size and the level of development of your projects. Most of you are familiar with this, so I won't dwell on it. Eligibility. So, let me just say it for about the 5th time. These are business-led programs. So we're expecting businesses to lead, but you don't need to have your full consortia identified at this stage. So if you have, you need to have a business who's the lead, usually the applicant, but you don't have to have all your collaborators signed up at this point. And I think that's quite a big point at the EOI stage. So we're wanting your ideas. You then, if we say yes, that's okay, we will help you actually and work with you using our usual tools to help kind of build that consortium and talk about it. But you don't have to have them all signed up when you actually pull the application in. So I think that is quite a big deal, I think. So it allows you to be much more free in terms of your ideas, and you don't actually have to go around, and I know a month is a long time to get a lot of other companies signed up, but you've got quite a lot of time after that. To be eligible, this is our standard eligibility rules. You need to be a UK business of any size or an ITO, carry out your work in the UK, intend to exploit the results in or from the UK, and collaborate with others. The lead organisation must be a business and claim funding through this competition. We've had a lot of questions in our CR&D in particular about businesses who want to be involved in a collaboration but don't want to take funding. It seems to be a growing thing, particularly in quantum, because there's quite a lot of companies who are really interested in quantum. They have a relatively small amount of internal activity, but they don't necessarily want to commit themselves to developing a work package. That is something we really like, because we want to expand the borders of the people who might consider themselves in quantum projects. So we don't want we want you to do more of that rather than less. Obviously, it's great if they contribute some costs too, but it has been quite a big thing over the last 12 hours actually, as it happens. But it's quite a big deal, because companies, of course, who've never had funding from us before, first time you see our forms, it can be a little bit of a shock, including to us actually sometimes. So again, we're looking to have a project profile. I think I've talked about this already, and we're looking to look at a range of different consortia and a range of different projects. Multiple applications. Okay, so in general, in the second stage, a business will only be able to lead on one application. In all honesty, and I have to say it just says that in the brief, we're prepared to consider multiple applications at EOI stage. And if you're successful in more than one, you'll have to choose which one you go forward with. But we don't want you to think, oh, I've got all these great ideas, I only really want to put one down. But you will have to narrow that down to more than to one moving forward. We won't necessarily tell you what they are. We might be able to give you some guidance over where the clear water is, but we won't to do that. But in brackets, that's not what it says on the brief. So I'm just kind of giving you some sort of information in there. Again, it's just about RTOs. If an RTO is approved, they must collaborate with at least 2 other businesses, and if you lead, then you can collaborate in any other applications, and academics can be part as many as they want. Now, I think we've talked about it a bit. Roger talked about it before, but I think it's worth dwelling on a little bit in terms of industry investment. So, I mean, one of our major objectives in our program in particular is increase industry investment, private sector investment into quantum. And in a way, so I think Roger kind of alluded to the fact we'd been set targets and almost dragged into this position. That is partly true, but it's also true the fact that we want to see a switch from the people using this technology being able to deliver them to the marketplace. And the only way we'll do that is to get some real industry investment in your facilities in order for you to develop and deliver those products and services. So we will be asking you how are you going to do that? And if your project is successful, what kind of private sector investment it will need and you expect to see in order to bring those particular solutions to the marketplace. It needs a little bit of a think, I think, in terms of what that means. So we're not expecting you to lie. But we're also not expecting you to sign a contract saying, we will, when this project is finished, we will build this £20 million plant. But we are expecting you to be honest with us about where you think this is going to lead into increased private sector investment in the UK. And I kind of think I think you're going to be, all the ISCF, this is a very common theme. I kind of think it's going to be a common theme right across the board. I think Roger mentioned the 2.4%, though actually I've heard higher numbers being mentioned than 2.4%. But it's clearly we can't achieve that by just putting more money through our university system. Most of that, 2/3 of that increase has got to come from private sector investment. So if that's going to be a big thing, it's going to be a continuing big thing. I think actually that's one of the very few things that all the political parties seem to agree on. So I think whatever happens over the next sort of 6 to 8 weeks, we're going to have a continued investment on R&D being important, but also on the fact that private sector investment is an increasingly big thing. A couple of technical things. If you can use a resubmission to apply for this competition. That is quite important, actually, considering that some of you may have recently put a CR&D competition in, and you will probably, by the time the second round comes along, we will probably have had the results of the first 2 CR&D and feasibility studies, so you will know really by the time you get through the next stage whether or not you're successful. We're also increasingly looking at the success of grants you've had in converting them into economic growth. If you've had 10 grants from us worth £10 million and you had 4 people then and you've got 4 people now, we'll all be asking kind of what you've done with that money. And if it's just turnover through your business and paid the mortgage, then that's not what we want to see. We want to see evidence of putting some leverage in our money and actually maybe going out, if you're getting more money from us, going out into the capital markets and trying to be more ambitious in how you match our projects. But it will be important to do that. Again, I'm not going to go through accountants' reports, but if you've got an outstanding report, we will want to see. I guess about IP exploitation kind of is worth dwelling on a little bit. So what it says is we need to be sure that your participation does not prevent IP-generated product being exploited. So what we're getting at here is increasingly quantum is considered as a sensitive technology, not by just in the UK, but other countries, particularly the US. So there are particular implications if you have a foreign subsidiary, for example, or a foreign parent, that how you actually ring-fence that IP to ensure that it doesn't effectively become contaminated with, for example, American IP that then comes under ITAR. So we want you just to dwell on the fact that if you have significant foreign links, and particularly those links involving IP exchange, how will you think about the problem of how do I stop my IP becoming mixed into IP which is subject to technology export regulations from another country? I mean, most of you, some of you kind of look a bit confused because the whole idea of technology export might be a bit new for you, but it is an interesting thing, and things like the Google announcement we had a few weeks ago, I think is focusing a lot of government's attention around the world on the potential implications of quantum. So I'm not going to make a big thing about it, but it's just something for you to dwell on. If you've got a foreign parent, you just need to think about how you do. It's not impossible, actually. We've got loads of companies in our portfolio now who are in this situation, and they can tell you in 2 or 3 sentences how they do it. And actually, it's worth talking to them, actually, because some of them are here, and it might be worth talking to them about kind of how they do it, because it is a lesson you sometimes need to learn. So as we get to the end, what are we looking for? I mean, we're looking for ambitious project proposals to address shared technological barriers to delivering the products and services exploited by UK businesses. We are looking to inspire businesses to work together. Now, I know a lot of you work together anyway, but we're interested to see kind of a more interesting interactome between different organisations. And we want you to maybe think about pre-competitive technologies as well as kind of shared competitive technologies. We really want to get businesses to talk about what you'd really want to do together, and how some money from us in a structured way can help you do those collaborations. It's a light touch process, so it's not quite a brain dump, because actually, and one of the purposes is we have a lot of discussions with businesses, and we understand that often the only way to focus internal discussions in a business, particularly if they even potentially involve internal spend and commitment, is to actually put a deadline and actually put a competition together. Because there's always, in a business, there's always something more important, isn't there, than looking at something which might be kind of 5-7 years out. So we really want to get you to maybe as a competition might give you an excuse to force some of those conversations you were meaning to have. Oh yeah, we'll get together in the new year. We'll talk about it then. I mean, we want you to use this as an opportunity to force some of those conversations together. And they don't need to go very far, but they need to go far enough to develop into a really ambitious project that one or more of your businesses really want to get behind. I've just got a couple of things around which I kind of always show now about building a successful consortium. One of the kind of points here is that eligible for state aid. Any of you who know us will kind of know the thorn in the side that state aid is. But when you're building a consortium, you need to make sure that all of your consortium members are eligible to take state aid. That kind of involves a rather sensitive question you have to ask about the financial details of each other's companies. But I just kind of, you don't need to dwell on it at the EOI stage, but at some point you do need to start talking about this sort of thing. I'm not going to go through this slide, but there are specific issues around state aid, which most of you will have come across already. I guess finally, we're always looking at, particularly in this program, for things look like industry leadership. So we're increasingly good at telling the difference between a consortium that's been strapped together by academics or RTOs and one that's genuinely industry-led. And particularly when we go through an interview stage, as we do here, that becomes really obvious. The joke, sorry, I'm stealing Roger's joke here actually, but the joke that Roger always makes is you don't want the first time you meet to be when you're on the couch outside the interview room, because you do sometimes get, right, who's going to present? And everybody looks at each other. And so really use this as an excuse to develop your relationships, because we can tell straight away what the chemistry is like now between a consortium, and it does mean you're spending a little bit more time together, I think. So you work as a team and you present as a team. I kind of also say that project managers companies play a great role, but they don't play a great role in actually putting consortia together. In our experience, that might not be, this is my own personal view, but might not be yours, but it is an observation we have. As I say, you need to work together as a high-performance team. Putting together a project like this, let me be really clear, is not an easy process, but it's quite a concentrated process, and once you get through it, I mean, I think everybody, let's get on with it. But building these consortia, they are hard work, but I think you're probably used to doing that already. So finally, project dates. So as we've talked about before, this EOI phase closes again at noon, as I've said before, like most of our competitions. So the reason why we're laughing is that we had one competition where we had kind of one application. This is the last CR&D, one application at 11 o'clock, and the competition at 12. And we then had 16 in the previous hour. I'm getting old now. I've got a weak heart. Don't put me through this, folks. I mean, get your application in the day before. I don't need it, all right? And neither does Lydia. So if you're successful, we'll then start talking about getting to the next phase. So the next phase will open on the 9th of December, close on the 5th of December. We'll have interviews and applicants will be notified yet. So that's the timeline which you need to get. Again, all these slides will be available, and nearly all of them actually are on the website already. The competition is open now, so get in touch with me, but you are as best as, even if you do it as well as, using our customer service line as well, or instead of talking to me. The reason why is that they make a record of all your inquiries, which means if I forget, as I sometimes do, then they nag me to get back to you. So it's always best, and also they keep a record of our responses. So if we change our mind, you've at least got some evidence for it. So use the customer service line as much as you possibly can. So We're going to, Lydia's going to talk a bit later, and then we're going to have some questions, so keep your questions till later. We've got a quick break for coffee now. If you want to talk to Roger or I or both of us afterwards, then talk to Natasha. And thank you. We'll see you in 15 minutes. I don't know how long, probably 15 minutes. Okay, thank you.
Hello, everybody. So this bit, as I'm sure you know if you've applied with us before, is usually really, really long. Because this is an expression of interest, and Chris stole all of my slides, it is very quick. So most of my slides you've already seen, but they are very important, so we'll go through them again. So as you might have noticed, we've got this new branding, which means we have a new slide, a general introduction to UKRI. UKRI is the group name for all of the research councils, Innovate being one of them, MRC, BBSRC, you may know some of the others. So just general information about what we do. Okay, so the eligibility criteria for the 6th time. So you can have a resubmission for this call. It's unlikely you will have one because it's an EOI and it's a different call, but this is the definition of what is and is not a resubmission, and if your application is classed as a resubmission, that's fine in this case. Again, I'm not going to go through the slides in great detail. They will be available for you as a slide deck, and also there's a recording of this whole briefing, and Chris has covered most of them already. Okay, so eligibility criteria again. Just a reminder, the lead must be a UK business of any size. Must be collaborative, including other businesses, research organisations, RTOs, public sector organisations or charities. You must carry out your project in the UK. You must exploit the results either from or in the UK. In exceptional circumstances, as Chris mentioned, an RTO can lead, but you need to have approval. So if you feel that you want an RTO leading, or you are an RTO and want to lead, please contact us. It's not an outright no, but you will need our permission. If you just apply and you haven't spoken to us, you'll be ineligible. Project costs, this is not the grant, this is your total project costs, between £4 and £20 million. And the project length between 18 and 36 months. So this is an overview of the types of organisation that we fund. And the amount of funding you get depends on which of these categories you fit into. There is a definition here you can see of definition of a business, also things like size of business. Are you an SME? Are you large? It depends on a number of things. If you are not sure, there is guidance on the front page, the competition page on our website, and there is a link on these slides. So we mentioned state aid. In order to be eligible, you have to pass what we call Undertakings in Difficulty, or UID. So this applies to limited liability companies over 3 years old. If you have a parent company, the tests can be performed on them. And basically, it works out whether more than half of your share capital has disappeared as a result of losses. So have you lost more than half of what you're worth? If you are not sure, then you need to seek legal advice. We cannot advise you on this. There is information, again, on the front page of the website, on the funding website, about what state is, what the guidelines are, because some of you might never have seen this before. You have to make sure that you're eligible when you apply, and then if you're successful in the competition, we will run this check in the setup part as part of our general eligibility and viability checks. Again, it's up to you to tell us that you are eligible. So this is a rather in-depth overview of Article 25, which is the particular type of state aid that this runs. As Chris said, it's not for capital investments, so we're not building new buildings. So again, I'm not going to go through this. It's all quite wordy. There is guidance online. If you're not sure, seek advice, please. Okay, so the point of state aid is that we have to optimize level of funding to business and recognize the importance of research. So this is the split of research to business. So at least 70% of the total eligible project costs have to be incurred by a business. So the maximum level, the 30% remaining, is shared by all of the research organisations in the consortia. So the charities, research organisations cannot incur more than 30% of the total project cost. This is not the grant, the total project costs. If you have lots and lots of non-businesses, they share this 30% between them. The business must incur at least 70% of the costs. So what is collaboration and what do we need? There has to be at least 2 organisations claiming a grant. One of these must be the lead. There has to be evidence of effective collaboration. We want to know why you're collaborating with who you are and why them. So our general rules are nobody outside of the UK. If there is somebody who's outside the UK, we want to know why it has to be them. Does the equipment they have not exist in the UK? Do they do something no one else does? So if you have someone, particularly with your subcontractors further down the line, we need to know why things aren't happening in the UK. This is all UK taxpayers' money and it's going to UK business and economy, so we would like to know why the money should leave. You can make more than one application, so you can be involved in as many applications as you like, but you can only lead on one if you're a business. An RTO, again, can only lead on one application and can collaborate with any number. If the RTO is not the lead, they can collaborate on as many as they like, and an academic partner can collaborate on any number. So basically, you can lead on one, is the rule. So this is, if you have an outstanding, what we call IIR, at the end of your project, an existing project, basically if there's anything outstanding finances-wise from a grant you have with us, you will get no more funding. This is not live competitions. If you are in the process of running a project, that's fine. It's if you have something outstanding from a previous project with us. Also, if you've been thought that you did not exploit, you haven't made enough effort, you won't get any more funding. This is general guidelines. We are not expecting this to be the case. We just have to tell you. So the key dates you've seen a number of times, so here they are again. So this phase opened on Monday. The briefing event is today, and this closes in just under a month on the 27th of November at 12 p.m. noon. Phase 2 opens the 9th of December, so that will be the full phase. And then the submission deadline for that's the 5th of February. You have to be successful in this phase to be invited to the second phase. If you are having problems with submitting, please don't try and submit on the last day for the very first time. Get hold of customer support so we can have this logged. We do want you to get your applications in, if possible, so any problems, let us know sooner rather than later. So the IFS is the Innovation Funding Service. This is the system with which you will apply. It is online. So probably a number of you will be familiar with this, but in case you are not, when you click Apply on IFS, you will be taken to a page where you can search. So use the keyword search to find a competition you're interested in, and then all the results will come up. If you click on the title, it will open the competition. At this stage, you can see the summary, eligibility, scope, dates, how to apply, loads and loads and loads of guidance. The brief for the competition, links to state aid, links to EU definitions of business. It's all here on this front page. You can read all of this and go through everything before you start your application. So we suggest you read everything through. There's contact details if you need support as well. Once you're happy and you've read everything, you can click the big Start New Application button. If you have applied before, you can just log in using your standard details. You don't need a new login for every competition. If you have not applied before, then you will need to create an account. So the lead on the project creates an account and then invites everybody else in. Again, this is EOI, so it's a little bit different. At the full stage, there will be another briefing. We will tell you this all over again. So sign in if you've already got details, otherwise create an account. All the contact will be through IFS, so make sure your details are correct. If we need to email you, if we need to call you, this is where we get your information from, so please make sure it's up to date. You can use our Companies House lookup to search for your organisation. You can just manually enter it if not. If you are an RTO or an academic, manually enter your details so you're not accidentally classed as a business, which would affect your funding levels. So on this EOI, we don't have any questions, really. We just have these standard sections. So you put in your application team, details, summary description, and then scope. There are no numbered questions 1 to 10 for this EOI. So make sure your research category is correct, as this affects your grant value. Project summary, highlight the need and challenge, approach and innovation. This sets the scene for anybody who's reading it. In the full, this would be the assessors. In this one, it's just general information. The public description would be published if your project was successful. Again, because this is leading into a second phase, not so relevant here. Scope, how is your project in scope? If you are not sure, please get hold of us. Speak to Chris, get hold of the support people. Yeah, if you apply and it's not in scope, then it goes no further. So please check with us beforehand to find out if what you're trying to do is in scope. So submitting your application, as it has just turned 12 o'clock, this is very, very relevant. This is uploads to IFS leading up to 12 o'clock. And as you can see, everybody takes our advice not to leave it until the last 2 minutes. This happens every single time, without fail. I'm sure it's happened today, as one has just closed. Please, please, please check your application beforehand. If you have a tech problem at 2 minutes to 12, tough, I'm afraid. So the lead will be the one who gets knowledge as to what has and has not been done. Again, this is an EOI, it's a little bit different. As I'm sure you know from full stages, all the partners have to have done everything. They have to have ticked every box, they have to have completed every section, and the lead will be able to see what hasn't been done. So if you are the lead, your job is to chase everyone constantly, because otherwise you press the button and you find out somebody somewhere didn't do something. You have to call them, they have to log in, you can't do it for them. So it's really, really important that you do this in time. If you are having technical problems, truly, please let us know sooner rather than later. If there is a general technical issue on the site, that would be addressed and you wouldn't be penalised for that. We would allow you to submit. But forgetting to tick a box is not a technical problem. Forgetting to upload something is not a technical problem. When we get to further down the line, JES forms with the academics, be aware that takes time and they're nothing to do with us. So submitting a JES form to your council is nothing to do with us. Everything has to be uploaded, ticked and completed by 12 o'clock. At 1 second past 12, the system will not let you upload. So there will be tears if there aren't. There always are. So please, please, please submit your application early. Make sure every partner has done everything, has completed everything, because if it ends up being your fault, your consortia probably won't be very happy with you. Yes.
Very quick comment.
Yes.
Because I had some tears. Coating down my cheeks earlier. It wasn't clear the synchronisation of the JES form submission and the Innovate UK. It became clear when I tried to submit the Innovate UK without the JES form, but it wasn't clear until I tried to do that.
Right.
At which point I went, oh shit, I have to do a JES form now. So perhaps just with a couple of words that could be.
Yeah. So in the full briefing, we have a JES. A set of JES slides, and there is a link to JES guidance. Because it's a completely different system and organisation to Innovate, we cannot control it.
My quick suggestion is on the Innovate side.
Yeah, it will take time.
Done before
Yeah.
the submission of the Innovate form, but that's
Yeah.
not at all clear.
Okay. Yeah. So it's not relevant at the EOI, but it will be at the full stage. So the JES form, for those who are not familiar, is for academics. It needs to be submitted. The academics will be familiar with this, to their council, who have to authorise it, give it back to you. You have to download it, and then you have to upload it with your Innovate application. This does take time, and we have no connection. We can't get that form, which is why you have to upload it to us. So I will make sure in the full briefing that I put that as well. Things do take time, things need uploading, we need to check all your finances have to match. Please take the time to make sure everything is done, tick every box, check all your partners have ticked every boxes, because it really will be tears on the phone on upload day. So that's it for me, much, much shorter than usual. So here are our standard contact details. Customer support services, as Chris said, if you contact them, everything is logged and then they chase us for answers if we haven't gone back to you. The KTN details are here if you are looking for collaborators, and then general Innovate UK links here. But both Chris and Roger are here all afternoon, so scope questions, process questions, anything you might have. Again, a little unusual because it's an EOI, so it's very short, there's different questions, you don't need all your finances. But yeah, so are there any questions on anything?
Hi, sorry. Fraunhofer is obviously an RTO. So if I understand it correctly, if we were to have our arms twisted to the extent that we were to lead with all the caveats, could we participate in a further submission, or is it lead one and that's it?
So my understanding is that, and if you go back to the slides, I think it goes back a long way. So if you lead on one, okay, yeah, we'll have to go back. Yeah, I'll catch up with you later. But I think if you do, it's because it's so unusual for RTS lead. In fact, it hasn't happened in one of our competitions. If you were to do, I'll have a look. It is in the slides. I just haven't got it up at the moment.
You can lead on one and collaborate on any number of others.
Yes, so which means you can only lead on one, but you can be a collaborator on others. That's right. So any more general questions for either Lydia, Roger, or I?
Give you the mic so people on the webcast can hear as well.
Mark Day from Opticap. Just to confirm that there is absolutely no possibility to invest in any capital equipment that would possibly be needed.
No, under this, so if you don't understand how our capital work, we don't allow you to buy capital outright. What we do allow you to do is pay for the usage of that equipment based on the proportion of the amount you use and based on what your standard depreciation terms are. No, I mean, there's a technical reason as to why we can't do it, actually, because you can't mix different strands of state aid into the same competition. But no, we don't allow you to do that. But you can, obviously, if you're going to buy equipment and your standard depreciation terms as over the project and you're going to use it an N percentage of the time, you can do like that. But you do recover that cost as you go along. Esther?
It was just a bit more clarity on that. I thought earlier it was stated that at the expression of interest stage, you could lead on more than one project.
Yes, sorry.
But if it gets through to the second stage, then it's only one.
Yeah, I mean, just to be clear, it does actually say on the brief you can lead only one. But I think after the brief had been published, we realised that was too restrictive for the EOI. So we are happy for you to put more than one EOI in with the same lead. But you will, if more than one is successful in going forward, you will have to choose which one of those goes.
I was just checking for consistency because I think a difference in
message. It's tricky because we're trying to brief on both. We're trying to give you a vision of what the second compet phase is going to look like. But at the moment, a lot of the things we've talked around kind of don't apply to the EOI stage. Nothing else? Okay, well, great, thank you. If any of you have any specific questions for us, I have to say either now or in the next month or so, those of you who have kind of clusters, we're also prepared to have teleconferences, or if we're in the near vicinity, talk to you directly in terms of helping. We say we don't help you, but we can give you some guidance, and we're interested in talking generally around the applications. But we would do that to everybody, and as would Bob, as will the KTN. So what we traditionally say, the KTN will also help you in consortium formation too. They don't do that if you use a professional bid writer, but if you don't, they'll also help look at your application and give you general guidance too. So if there's no other questions, we'll move to lunch. Thank you. Thank you everyone for going. Have a safe trip home. If any of you are talking to us, then we'll talk to you later.